Hey, it's Pastor Rick once again with another installment of In the Car with PR, a video devotional by the Ark Church in Pickerington, Ohio. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about the heart. You know, throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, we are constantly told that we need to love God more than anything else. In fact, as we get to the New Testament, we read the words of Jesus, he gets really kind of up in your face about this stuff. First, we read in Matthew 22, when he's asked, what is the most important commandment? Jesus says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. He said, this is the first and greatest commandment, but another one is equally important. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. He said, all the law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Now that's pretty intense when you think about it. He's saying that basically everything in the Old Testament, you know, all the demands of the prophets, the whole law, everything falls under these two commands, love God and love others. In other words, what he's saying is that if you take care of these two things, everything else falls into place. And we think to ourselves, you know, how is that possible? And then he goes kind of a step further in Luke chapter 15. When you start reading there in verse 25, he's speaking to a large crowd of disciples, and he says to him, he says, if you want to be my disciple, you must hate everyone else by comparison. Your father, your mother, your wife, your children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. What's Jesus saying here? He's saying, you got to love me more than everybody else. In fact, you've got to love me with such a passion, with such an intense love, just to be my follower, just to qualify, bare minimum requirement. He says, you've got to love me so much that the love you have for yourself, for your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, your children, it's got to look like hate when compared to how much you love me. Now that's a pretty bold statement. And we think, you know, why is it so important to love God? Why is it so important to love Jesus and to love him more than we love anything or anyone else? I thought a lot about that this morning in my quiet time, and I think we could sort of summarize the reason from a verse in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says this. It says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. I'm going to read that one more time. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. The fact is, wow, we got quite a traffic jam here today. The fact is that our heart determines where we go in life. Whatever we love, whatever we think about the most, that tends to be the driving force in our life. I mean, if we think about it, if our career is what we love the most, if we are focused on our career above everything else in our life, it's going to drive us. It's going to determine where we go in life. If we love our family more than we love anything else, it's going to drive us. It's going to determine what we do in life. And God says, you know, as important as some of these things are, obviously He wants us to love our family, and there's nothing wrong with striving for, you know, a good career. But He said, if you love these things more then you love me, those things are going to drive your life, and those things are not worthy of driving your life. As a matter of fact, they might just steer you in the wrong direction. So He says, what's better is that you love me. Love me because I created you. I created you. I know you better than anyone else knows you. I know what's good for you. And so if you love me more than you love anything else, you're going to let me drive you. You're going to let me determine where you go. You're going to learn to to follow me and trust me. And I'm going to help you out with your priorities in all these other areas. I'm going to make sure that you give ample time to your career. I'm going to make sure you give the appropriate amount of love and time and sacrifice for your family. I'm going to help you to organize the rest of your life. But the only way you're going to let me do that is if you love me more than anything else. He said, so you got to guard your heart. You got to guard your heart, and you got to protect it, and you got to make sure that you love me more than you love anything else. You want to love me even more than your family. And don't worry, because if you love me more than your family, I'll make sure you take care of your family. I'll make sure. And as a matter of fact, because you love me more than them, I'm going to take responsibility to care for them, to look out for them. So God says, protect your heart. Don't let anything else that vies for your affection, don't let it dominate. Just give me your heart, and I will make sure everything falls into place. You know, this morning, as you sort of hang out with God in your quiet time, I want you to consider, what is it that you truly love the most? What is it that's, you know, we can tell what we love the most by really two things. What is it that we think about the most? Whatever we think about the most is probably going to be what we love the most. And the second question we want to ask is, what drives us? What is it that drives us and makes the decisions for us in life? If it's anything else other than God, we're really hurting ourselves. And we're hurting the relationship we have with God. And we might even be putting our eternal future at risk. God says, just trust me. Love me more than everything else, and I'll make sure that your life gets worked out. I'm going to make sure that everything gets ample attention. I'm going to make sure that you're taken care of. And he says, you want to guard your heart. Don't let other things take the lead in your affection. So think about it this morning. What drives your life? Think about what do you think about the most? Is it sports? Is it your career? Is it things that you do in your free time, hobbies? Is it your family? Your children? Your possessions? Your bank account? What is it that drives you? What do you think about the most? What do you love? What is it that has stolen your heart? This morning, whatever it is, if it's not God, would you consider just laying those things down? God didn't say you have to get rid of those things necessarily. He said, I just want to be number one in your life. Will you consider this morning just putting those things aside, giving them over to God and saying, God, I want to love you more than I love those things. Guard your heart, God says, because it will determine the course of your life. What's driving the course of your life? This is Pastor Rick for now, signing off. Have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you. We'll see you next time.